I noticed when you're asking about Caitlin a lot, you bring up other rookies as well.
No league's ever about one player. That player could get hurt or whatever. So I think it's just to give recognition that in sports, people watch for compelling content and rivalries. And you can't do that alone as one person.
This is far from a simple sports headline. It's a wake-up call, a loud reminder of how unchecked ego, reckless decision-making, and one disastrous choice can shatter an entire empire before it even gets the chance to stand tall. It's not just about the game, it's about how quickly greatness can collapse when pride takes the wheel.
Never seen a company fumble the bag so hard like the WNBA fumbled Caitlin Clark. It sucks that so much of it was riddled with so much drama and so much negativity.
The WNBA was holding a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in its hands. They had a generational star, someone who wasn't just dominating on the court, but reshaping culture itself. Caitlin Clark wasn't simply another scorer filling up the stat sheet. She was a movement, a brand, a phenomenon, who managed to bring millions of brand new fans into women's basketball almost overnight. For a league that had spent nearly 30 years fighting tooth and nail just to be noticed, this should have been the golden era, their crowning achievement, their long-awaited breakthrough, their proof that the grind was worth it. But instead of celebrating her as the game-changer who could transform the sport forever, they treated her like she was replaceable. And in doing so, they made a mistake so monumental, it could leave a dark cloud hanging over the league for years, maybe even decades, to come. What started as a fairy tale has morphed into a full-scale war, and Caitlin Clark isn't fighting back with angry interviews or viral rants. She's using something far more powerful: leverage. She's quietly dismantling the WNBA's credibility in the one arena that truly decides the future: the boardroom. And here's the wild part. The sharks are already circling. Rival leagues, billionaire investors, and even celebrities with no connection to sports can see what the WNBA stubbornly refuses to admit. Caitlin Clark has outgrown the league. She is the headline, the brand, the force pulling everything forward. So how did it all fall apart? How did the WNBA manage to mishandle the most electric athlete of the past decade so badly that her rookie and sophomore years became a story of betrayal rather than triumph? Stick with me, because once we dig into the numbers, the public slights, and the massive offers flooding in from outside the league, you'll see this wasn't a small oversight. This was professional malpractice. This was the kind of earth-shaking mistake that ends up rewriting the history of an entire sport. When Caitlin Clark burst onto the national stage, it didn't feel like just another top draft pick entering the league. It felt like the beginning of a new era. From the very first time she lit up scoreboards in college, Clark wasn't simply chasing records. She was reshaping the entire perception of women's sports in America. Every game she played became a spectacle. TV ratings exploded. Social media lit up with her highlights. Kids everywhere were pulling up from half court, trying to copy her fearless style. She wasn't just a player, she became a cultural icon. By the time draft night rolled around, her story had already taken on mythic proportions. This wasn't just the league calling another name on draft day. This was supposed to be a moment of coronation, the breakthrough the WNBA had been praying for. Lightning caught in a bottle. A single superstar powerful enough to haul the sport into the mainstream on her back. And the effect was felt instantly. Tickets for Indiana Fever games disappeared within hours, gone almost as soon as they went on sale. Resale prices shot through the roof overnight. Entire arenas were suddenly packed to capacity, filled with fans, many of whom were stepping into a WNBA game for the very first time, just to witness Caitlin Clark in action. She was instant box office magic. Television ratings followed the same meteoric rise, with any broadcast featuring her smashing past previous league records. Attendance milestones were shattered, merchandise flew off shelves. Even casual sports fans, the ones who hadn't paid attention to the WNBA in years, were suddenly locked in on every step, every shot, every highlight she produced. In just a few short months, Caitlin Clark achieved what 2 decades of slogans, rebrands, and marketing pushes could never pull off. She made the WNBA feel relevant on a national scale. This should have been the dawn of a golden era, but what looked like a fairy tale on the outside quickly curdled on the inside. Because while Caitlin Clark gave the league everything it could have wished for, the WNBA answered back with a level of disrespect that will stain its reputation for years to come.
Here in the W, we pride ourselves on having a super welcoming,
Don't get stoned!
calm, low-stakes environment,
Boston will hoist.
She hit it!
where communication is highly valued.
Oh, it's getting chippy.
Collaboration is always encouraged.
Oh, what a pick!
We are devoted to working extra hard. We've been delivering astounding results since 1997.
Back to back.
Because this is a place where basketball matters.
Beautiful pass and a good catch and finish. Big time!
And if you love
Oh, Enrique!
real
Thomas with the spin!
basketball,
Unforgettable finish!
Welcome to the W.
Let's break it down with the numbers, because they make the betrayal impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever didn't just boost attendance, they completely rewrote the record books. By the end of the season, the Fever had pulled in over 200,000 fans through the gates. That's not just a good year, that's a historic, league-shifting milestone, higher than any other WNBA team had ever achieved. 200,000 people in seats night after night. That's not simple growth, that's a full-blown revolution. And it didn't stop there. National TV viewership skyrocketed by 21%. Just think about that. For a league that had been begging for mainstream attention for nearly 3 decades, this wasn't slow and steady progress. It was a breakthrough moment, a surge that proved Caitlin Clark wasn't just playing games, she was changing the entire trajectory of the sport. This wasn't just growth, it was survival. Caitlin Clark became a one-woman economic engine. Every time she stepped on the court, arenas overflowed with fans, merchandise sold out within hours, and TV ratings spiked. She wasn't just an athlete, she became the pulse, the very heartbeat of the entire league. And remember, this was coming from a rookie, a player who hadn't even begun to touch the ceiling of her prime. Pause and really think about that. For almost 30 years, the WNBA had tried everything. Catchy slogans, rebrands, marketing campaigns, corporate partnerships, and still struggled to stay relevant. Then Caitlin Clark showed up and almost overnight turned the impossible into reality. She single-handedly dragged the league from gasping for air to finally feeling alive. She was the goose laying golden eggs every single night, and the league didn't have to do anything except protect and celebrate her. But instead of treating her like the generational treasure she was, they insulted her in the most painful way possible. On her paycheck. Her rookie contract? 4 years, worth a total of just $338,000. For someone transforming the league's fortunes, that number was nothing short of a slap in the face. Break it down, and Clark's rookie deal comes out to about $85,000 a year. $85,000. That's less than what some mid-level managers make at tech startups. Less than what plenty of assistant coaches in men's basketball take home. And yet, that's what the league decided was fair for the one woman single-handedly keeping its doors open. It wasn't just a low number. It was an insult carved into the contract in black and white. Now put that side by side with the NBA. The number 1 overall pick there signs a rookie deal worth roughly $55 million over 4 years. That's not a typo. $55 million versus $338,000. That isn't a gap, it's a canyon. Clark wasn't simply underpaid, she was outright devalued. Run the math, she earned 162 times less than her male counterpart. Not a small percentage less, not even half, 162 times less. That isn't just a wage gap, it's a message. A declaration about how little the league was willing to invest in the very player who was carrying it into the future. It sent a clear, ugly message to the entire world. We don't value her. And once that level of disrespect became public, the ripple effect was devastating. Because when a league openly undervalues its brightest star, it sends a far darker signal. It tells every opponent, every defender, she's fair game. She's not untouchable. She doesn't get superstar treatment, she's just another rookie. That's when the insults stopped being numbers on a piece of paper and started showing up where it hurt most, on the court. The lack of protection turned into hard fouls, cheap shots, and a season that felt less like a celebration of her greatness and more like a punishment for daring to change the game.
They try so long to get respect for women's basketball, and then they treat it like a junior high school girl's locker room. Junior high school girl antics on the court. Instead of playing the game, they got to be drama because they're jealous. Instead of letting their skills speak for themselves, they got to be drama because they're jealous.
Almost overnight, Caitlin Clark had a target on her back. Opponents saw the small paycheck, the lack of league support, the unspoken message from the front office, and they went after her. Night after night, she took brutal punishment. Hard hip checks, mid-air shoves, and sneaky off-ball hits designed not to play defense, but to break her down. These weren't ordinary fouls. They were deliberate cheap shots, an ongoing test to see just how much punishment she could take before she cracked. And the referees? They stood there and let it happen. Whistles stayed silent, like they were glued to their pockets. The league office acted as if they couldn't see what was happening right in front of them. They had no issue using her name to sell out arenas or splashing her face across every marketing campaign. But when it came time to actually protect the player who was single-handedly reviving their business, they turned their backs and shrugged.
We have heard nothing from the WNBA, absolutely nothing.
Brittany Griner elbowing Caitlin Clark in a crazy way and then calling her a trash white girl.
And Brittany Griner has not commented, which I find significant. I've watched that video countless times, and it sure looks like Brittany Griner says,
the boiling point finally came during an ugly, unforgettable moment that fans still talk about. Cameras appeared to catch Brittany Griner hurling a disrespectful remark at Clark mid-game. The clip exploded online within hours. Lip readers dissected it. Fans were outraged, and social media demanded answers. And yet, the league's response was silence. No investigation, no fine, no suspension, nothing. The message couldn't have been louder. Caitlin Clark was on her own. And that silence was dangerous. Because when referees refuse to blow the whistle and the league refuses to hold players accountable, every opponent feels free to push the line even further. Every shove gets harder. Every foul gets nastier. The WNBA effectively sent its biggest star into battle with no protection, and everyone, players, fans, even Clark herself, knew it. There's only so much a body can take. You can live with a bad contract. You can swallow disrespect. But when every game feels like open season on your health, there's only one possible outcome. For Caitlin Clark, that outcome arrived on September 5th, 2025, the night her body finally gave out. The news landed like a bombshell. Caitlin Clark was officially ruled out for the rest of the season with a right groin injury. Headlines tried to soften the blow, framing it as a heartbreaking stroke of bad luck, a tragic twist of fate. But let's be honest, this wasn't random chance. This wasn't just bad luck. This was the price finally coming due. Months of unchecked abuse, of whistles swallowed, of a league office looking the other way. It all led here. This wasn't fate. This was negligence catching up with them in the worst possible way. And with Clark sidelined, the WNBA didn't just lose its brightest star. They lost the very momentum that had been saving their league.
Higher television ratings, higher attendance figures. Ladies and gentlemen, that doesn't come courtesy of a league. It comes courtesy of the players that play in the league. And in her case, she was the most popular, which means she could have helped your bottom line, which means you should have seen that from day one and maximized it. But you didn't do it.
Think back to everything Caitlin Clark went through in those first 2 seasons. The hip checks that carried extra force, the sharp elbows in traffic, the hard shoves that came while she was already airborne, the sneaky, dangerous off-ball hits to her ribs and hips designed to wear her down. Night after night, the punishment stacked higher and higher. And night after night, the referees swallowed their whistles, while league executives stayed silent, pretending nothing was wrong. Her body didn't break because she was weak or unable to handle the physicality. It broke because the system built to protect her never stepped in. This wasn't bad luck. It was the natural, predictable outcome of months of neglect. And when it happened, the the WNBA didn't just lose its biggest star, they showed the entire world that they couldn't even protect the one player who had pulled them out of irrelevance and made them matter again. But this is where everything shifts. While Clark was stuck on the sidelines, rehabbing from the damage the league had allowed to build for months, the world was watching closely. Rival leagues, deep-pocketed investors, billionaire entrepreneurs, they all saw the same thing. They saw the WNBA's golden goose beaten down and left unprotected by the very league that had sold out arenas on her name, plastered her face on every promo, and cashed in on every jersey sale. But unlike the WNBA, these outsiders understood her true value. They weren't circling to pick apart what was left. They weren't scavengers, they were visionaries. And the moment Caitlin Clark went down, the real power players began to circle, not to pick over the wreckage, but to create something entirely new. They were preparing to offer her everything the WNBA never could: real respect, actual protection, and money that finally reflected her true worth. Ironically, what looked like the lowest point of Caitlin Clark's young career became the turning point that gave her the greatest leverage she'd ever had. The WNBA believed they had her cornered. That rookie contract was supposed to keep her in line, underpaid, overworked, and smiling for the cameras while she carried the entire league on her back. But what they didn't understand was that her injury didn't break her, it exposed them. In that moment, the power dynamic flipped. Doors that had been locked for years suddenly swung wide open. The first and boldest opportunity came from Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league founded by Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. And with coaching legend Gino Wnba deeply connected to its vision, Unrivaled didn't look at Clark as an expense to control. They saw her as the centerpiece to build around. They saw her as the foundation, the piece everything else could be built around. And then they made their move, putting an offer on the table that made the entire sports world take notice. Over $1 million per year, plus something far more valuable, an equity stake in the league itself. This wasn't just a salary. This was ownership, legacy, influence. For the first time, Caitlin Clark wasn't being treated like a replaceable rookie in a long draft history. She was being treated like a partner, someone with the power to shape the future of the sport rather than just play within it.
And everybody talk about other NBA, WNBA players not being appreciated. Nobody insulted them. Nobody dismissed their contribution. We were simply saying, despite the contributions for years and years and years, a lot of people didn't care. Fair or not, until Caitlin Clark came along.
From that moment on, Caitlin Clark was finally getting the respect the WNBA had denied her from day one. The genius of Unrivaled's proposal wasn't just in the dollar amount. It was in the message behind it. They weren't saying, "Here's money to play." They were saying, "We're willing to invest in you as the face of our future." That single move was enough to shake the entire basketball world. It proved what fans had been shouting all season long. Caitlin Clark wasn't just another talented player. She was the league. And if the WNBA refused to treat her like it, someone else would. But that was just the appetizer. The real shock came next, from a completely unexpected source. Not a coach, not a GM, not even a rival basketball executive, but a cultural icon who had built an empire on breaking rules and rewriting the game. Just when it seemed like the story couldn't get any worse for the WNBA, it did, because Ice Cube stepped into the conversation. And the deal he put on the table made the league's treatment of Clark look less like oversight and more like a cruel joke. At first, most people brushed off the rumors. Ice Cube's Big 3 league offering Caitlin Clark millions for a short-term deal? It sounded like a wild headline, the kind of story cooked up just to grab clicks. Many fans assumed it was posturing, a PR stunt to generate buzz. But then the real numbers dropped, and they were impossible to ignore. The official offer? $15 million. And not for 4 years. Not for 40 games. Not for a grueling WNBA season. No, $15 million for a 10-week stretch of basketball. Stop and let that sink in. The WNBA had her locked into a 4-year rookie contract worth a total of just $338,000, barely $85,000 per year. Then Ice Cube came in and said, "How about $15 million for 10 weeks? That wasn't a negotiation, that was a statement. A public shaming. A bullhorn moment where Cube effectively stood on the rooftop and shouted to the world, "This is what she's actually worth. The WNBA had just proven it had no idea what its most valuable asset was truly worth. And this was never just about Caitlin Clark's paycheck. It was about perception, about optics. The Big Three didn't simply outbid the WNBA, they embarrassed it. They showed that a rapper-turned-business mogul had a better grasp of Clark's market value than the very league that had been riding her name to record profits. That $15 million number didn't just overshadow her rookie contract, it obliterated it. And overnight, the story shifted. The WNBA wasn't protecting Clark. They weren't lifting her up or turning her into the face of the future. They were holding her back, undercutting her at every turn. Now the receipts were out there for the entire world to see. And this wasn't some minor difference in salary. It was an exposure of just how deeply the league had failed its brightest star. This was payback, revenge written in bold, shining dollar signs. It was revenge on a league that believed it could cash in on her image while tossing her pennies in return. In a single moment, the entire balance of power shifted. Caitlin Clark no longer needed the WNBA, but the WNBA suddenly couldn't breathe without her. For months, league executives had been living under a dangerous illusion. They thought Clark was locked down, boxed in by her rookie deal, with no other choice but to play along. They believed they could take her for granted because, in their minds, she had nowhere else to go. Then Ice Cube dropped the $15 million bombshell, and everything flipped. That number wasn't just money, it was a declaration of independence. It was proof that fans had been right all along. Caitlin Clark's value wasn't 6 figures. It wasn't 7. She had officially crossed into 8-figure territory, an undeniable superstar. And the part that stung the most? She did it without ever begging for their blessing, without asking for their approval. She made herself bigger than the system that tried to contain her. Think about what that moment really meant. The WNBA had spent 2 seasons marketing Caitlin Clark as the face of its future, plastering her image everywhere, yet never once gave her the treatment that true franchise players deserve. Ice Cube didn't just cut her a check. He validated her existence as the biggest name in the sport. He told the world, "You're not crazy. This woman is worth everything." That was the gut punch. His offer didn't just expose the WNBA's blind spot, it confirmed it. It proved that the league had no idea how to nurture its golden goose. And here's the part that really stings. The damage isn't even tied to whether Clark accepts the contract tomorrow. The damage is that the offer exists at all. It now looms like a storm cloud over every WNBA press conference, every sponsor meeting, every boardroom decision. That number, $15 million, sits in the room whether Kathy Angel-Burt wants to acknowledge it or not. And with that single move, Caitlin Clark gained something no WNBA player had ever truly possessed: leverage. Real leverage. The power to demand protection. The power to demand respect. The power to negotiate not just her salary, but her influence on the future of women's basketball itself. And that's the league's nightmare scenario. Because once a player realizes she doesn't need the institution to survive, the institution loses control forever. The WNBA can't shove Caitlin Clark back into the box. Not after Ice Cube blasted her true value through a megaphone for the entire sports world to hear. The league thought it owned Caitlin Clark. The reality? She now owns the future of the sport. This was never just about basketball. This was about vision, about respect, about a league that was handed the keys to its own salvation, and somehow fumbled them straight into the gutter. Clark didn't just show up as a good player. She was a once-in-a-generation gift, a ratings magnet, an attendance boom, a jersey-selling machine. She gave them everything. And what did she get back? A rookie deal that was a slap in the face. Silence while referees swallowed their whistles. Shrugs while opponents turned games into wrestling matches. And worst of all, absolute nothing when racial slurs echoed across the court. They didn't just undervalue her, they betrayed her. Now comes the reckoning. Caitlin Clark's revenge isn't petty subtweets or passive-aggressive interviews. It isn't just putting up 30 a night to prove a point. Her revenge is leverage. It's rival leagues lining up with 8-figure offers, with equity stakes, with the one thing the WNBA never gave her: respect. Ice Cube's $15 million bombshell didn't just rattle the market. It flipped the entire balance of power. The WNBA thought Clark was trapped, that she had no choice but to play along. The truth is, they were the ones trapped. They need her more than she will ever need them. And now, for For the first time in basketball history, one player holds the fate of an entire league in her hands, and she knows it. So, the question becomes crystal clear. When that rookie contract finally expires, does Caitlin Clark stay loyal to the very league that disrespected her? Or does she walk away, taking her millions of fans, her economic power, and her cultural influence somewhere new? The WNBA had its chance. They had their savior. They had the golden ticket every struggling league dreams about, and they fumbled it. Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA to define her legacy. But the WNBA? They may have just lost their future. What do you think? Should Caitlin leave the WNBA and take her talents elsewhere, or force the league to finally respect her worth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you agree, subscribe for more breakdowns like this, and smash that notification bell so you never miss an update. Click the video on screen right now. We've got even more on how this story could change women's basketball forever.